Throughout the stages of my life, I've always found comfort and inspiration through the wisdom and advice shared with me by other women. As a young girl, I was nurtured by my mother and grandmothers, and I looked up to camp counselors and babysitters. As a young professional, I sought out female mentors and role models, and as a stay-at-home mother, I credit much of what I learned about parenting from the tribe of other mothers who I met in playgroups and at my children's schools. When I re-entered the workforce, I gravitated toward women-only networking groups and events. So as you listen to our panelists tonight, I hope that you'll have that same feeling of comfort and connection and inspiration as they share their wisdom and advice.
A lot of, if you have an Amex or any type of credit card, you can search your transactions, and that's a great way to kind of start with your budget. Take your paycheck if you aren't sure what your sort of income number is. You can look at your year-end paycheck to get an annual number. You can look at whatever one of your recent paychecks is to sort of get a monthly number and break it down from there. Next thing, once you have that budget, take a look at what 6 months of your expenses are, and you should have that in a high yield savings, some type of a checking account, very safe account. And you want to do that really just for peace of mind. And so that's that can be in your emergency fund, that can be in your checking account, but make sure you kind of have that cushion. And then the last thing, max out your retirement contributions to the extent that you can. If your company has a match, try to take full advantage of that match at least, because that's free money for you. So you definitely want to make sure you can get that. And then once you hit these three things, then you can start thinking about investing for yourself, investing outside of retirement.
Really important to get all your information down, to share if you have a partner, to so that people know what you have, and also you get to decide where your assets go. Getting something down on paper is it's freeing, and it makes you feel good when it's done and you don't think about it. So I highly recommend it.
Really just how vulnerable these conversations are, and looking at the data is, right? So thinking about who do I want to take care of my child when I die is a lot to think about. And even if we're just talking finances, looking at, oh my God, how much did I spend on this, is very vulnerable to look at. So I do think it's just like making the information accessible to you so that you can take a step, right? Whether that's just getting some recommendations for lawyers, for your friends, or really just starting by looking at how much you spend, even like going with a friend with your laptops and like getting a cup of tea and, holding hands and getting through it together.
I think that where we see a shift, and why I say do a budget, is because a lot of times you might be saving more than you need to, and you kind of put it all down on paper, and you're like, I'm in a better position than I thought I was. Like, maybe I can go take a vacation. Maybe I should be thinking about, what are my goals rather than just, trying to get by and make it. So I think that's definitely the biggest shift that we've seen, and kind of once you feel that you're okay, you're more willing to take risks.
I'm sure it's important when they speak to you, Sarah, that they both get it down on paper so that someone doesn't have 80% of their money in crypto, and so that it's all taken into account. Both documents will mesh together, but each person has a will, each person has a trust, unless it's a couple that's been together for so many years and everything is intertwined. We may do a joint trust, but generally you're doing it separately. But a lot of the provisions are the same. Mm-hmm.
It's something I wish we could just talk about in on the dating app and before time. I think the sooner you can, and the better, if whenever it's appropriate for you. I think to me the most important thing is to keep having the conversations, because what I notice is people's relationship to money also changes throughout their lives. So a lot of times you marry someone, they're making a certain amount of money, suddenly they get a big jump and they're like, yeah, I knew that as soon as I make this much, I'm gonna buy a Ferrari and do all that. And then they change completely. It's a conversation that you'll have for the rest of your life, because you're gonna change.
So at Geller Advisors and previously at BNY Mellon, you work with mostly high net worth individuals and families. how can those of us who may not yet qualify for whatever Geller Advisors minimums are, adjust those strategies so that they can kind of work for the people who are like in the building stage?
In terms of building wealth, usually when we do a presentation like this, the next question is like, where do I start? Like, I don't even know how to open an account.
Yeah.
There's so many different robo-advisors, places you can choose where it's like, they'll take you through a little quiz. We have one within our firm, takes you through a little quiz about what's your risk level, how do you make decisions, and then puts you with, here's your asset allocation, ask about your goals, when you need the money, to the risk and the time horizon. So you don't need to know how to do it yourself in order to set yourself up for success. And I think that's probably a very big miscommunication or judgment error that people have.
Somehow, often the woman is assumed that they just know how to make coffee. Like, you just know. Because I never drank coffee, and I actually don't know how to. I mean, I could probably figure it out, but like, you know, in an office building, it's like this the whole system, and I'm like, I don't know. And you know, a lot of times it's like, oh, well, you'll take notes, and that it gets annoying after a while. But at other firms that I have been through, it's been very equitable and very, you know, you're there and they recognize that you're smart, and there's really been like no distinction between the, you know, male and the female employees or attorneys. So it's really varied. I mean, I think I remember coming out of school and thinking like, sexism, we got that, it's done. Like, there's nothing left to do, and there's more work, and there's education that needs to go along, and you know, we push through. And I think it's nice to have a career where I can, you know, I don't have to put on that armor and be like, oh, you know, that male energy. I can be who I am and enjoy the work and enjoy speaking to people, and you know, move from there.
Because typically finance is so male dominated, but what we do, you're dealing with people, you need a lot of emotional intelligence, high EQ, which is typically something that works well for women. So regardless of what place I've been at, I've always felt like I've been valued for my ability to connect with a client, to read the room. It might be, you know, the CEO of a company that's sitting across from me, but when they're meeting with me, they're not talking about deals, they're talking about their family, their kids, their wife. So it's just a very different conversation, it's a different skill set. So if you know people looking for a career in finance and they're a woman, I feel like it's a great one for women, because it does utilize that skill that women typically have.
It's impossible to have balance. Like, if you're giving towards your kids and your family, like, your work life is not penalized, but it's on a lesser, you know, scale. And then if you're giving towards work, then your kids or your home life might be not suffering. That's a little bit strong, but like lacking. I do think for me, what works is scheduling and keeping it up to date. I have an open, you know, monthly planner. I use my phone always to just make sure everything's in there, and I look at it the night before, and I certainly look at it like the, you know, Sunday night, just to check out what's coming up. So that just keeps me like making sure I'm hitting everything.
There's a lot, you know, especially if you're married to a man, they are very capable. You can bring them into the home just as much as we come into the workplace. The method I work with is called Fair Play. That is what I recommend to everyone, because that's the biggest game changer. There's just less on your plate, so it's easier to find work-life balance as a mom.
Ask for help. People are very willing to help out even when they don't know. You go through LinkedIn, you know some connection. There are times you will hit a roadblock and someone will not be helpful, but asking someone who's you know, in my case right now, I have a few mentors who've been practicing trust and estates for, you know, a varying number of years, and it's been very helpful having that guidance out there. And you can ask. More times than not, people just are very happy to help someone else.
Take chances, be brave, feel free to reach out to somebody. The worst somebody can say to you is no, and then you move on, or it doesn't work out and you move on. So
But, like without thinking about anyone else's expectations at all, what are my preferences? What is my ideal here? And then go from there. It kind of like starts the conversation with your ideal in mind.